So good morning. Thank you for organizing this debate, which is both important and very timely. So on the circular economy, my presentation will be focused on the Commission proposals and the action plan. So maybe I will state the obvious for some aspect, and I hope open the discussion so that we can discuss more the details of the action plan. So first, the other way, sorry. So first, obvious things to state is why are we working on circular economy? And the motivation is, of course, the limitation of the linear economy that we have today. It is obvious, and at the same time, I think it is important to recall, in the sense that with the circular economy, we want a real transformation of the economy because we are not pleased with the economy we have currently, because we lose value of materials and products, and there is a clear case here for recovering this value and feeding the economy with this value, because we are confronted with scarcity of resources and volatile prices of these resources on international markets. So there is a clear economic case, economic incentive to go more circular. And then finally, because the waste generated is not only a loss, but has an environmental impact. And we all know that the ecosystems on which we live are fragile, and we are already exceeding the limits of recovery of these systems. That means that we can no longer continue the same path. So there is also a clear environmental case for circular economy, and we need to keep all these motivation, all these cases together. And I think this is really the challenge of circular economy. So just one example, which we're using quite often, on the dependence on the import of raw materials. The figures are quite striking. Europe is really dependent on the rest of the world as regards, of course, fuels, mining products, but also in terms of biomass and manufactured product. The exports don't always match the imports, which means that we're also creating impacts on the rest of the world and depleting resources globally through the European economy. So facing that, what is a circular economy? Now I think the definition has become classical, but it is worth reminding that the objective is to keep the value in products, in material, for as long as possible, and precisely along the life cycle of these products and materials. A second objective is to minimize waste generation. And you may remember that the Ellen MacArthur Foundation was adding a third objective in minimizing the inputs in the economy, which we think is a consequence of this circularity in the economy, but also to keep in mind that, of course, we will need some resources to continue feeding the economy, but we need to control these resources, to control the impact of these resources as far as possible, and to control the overall effect and impact of the cycle. So what do we expect of it? Clearly, a motivation of the package is an economic one in the first place, and of course it is the best way to sell a circular economy outside is to highlight the growth and job potential linked with circular economy, based on the estimation that we made already last year, supporting the previous communication, up to 60 billion euro in savings, 8% of the annual turnover of businesses in the EU. In terms of job creation, the figures that we show are the ones based on the waste proposals. So these 170,000 additional direct job creation are to be added to the job creation already associated with waste regulations. This is important. This is an important argument. This is not the only one, but of course, circular economy will be judged primarily on the achievement of these objectives. Linked to that, we need to highlight also the environment objectives, the resilience created in the economy in terms of economic resilience, environmental resilience, the innovation to be encouraged, and the overall impact reduced on the environment, on the climate change, which is also quantified in the proposals and need to be achieved as objective. So the package itself, this has been recalled, it's made of an action plan, a list of precise action, and I think it is important to stress that this package is really based on very concrete action with a schedule on how the different proposals or action will be achieved. So here we are not anymore on a large plan with vague deliverables, but on very concrete deliverables, so as to build the framework, to create the conditions for circular economy to happen, to relate it to the objectives of circular economy. Of course, the link between the two can always be discussed, and sometimes it is not obvious to see exactly how concrete action will contribute to the overall objective, and this can be discussed. But I think it is important to kickstart the movement, to make things happen with concrete action, and then to see how this can be improved in time. And then, very importantly, the legislative proposals on waste also contribute very importantly to this framework creation. And you know that since the package was adopted, we have also adopted a proposal on fertilizers, which completes this legislative framework. So the actions cover the complete cycle of products and materials, as was said. It is important to stress also that actions on innovation, on investment, with the mobilization of financial instruments, and this is an important point, as Mrs. Pietikäinen highlighted, that funding is aligned with the objective and the action. Monitoring is probably less detailed than it was in last year's package, but this is an area precisely to be further explored and refined. The package identifies 5 priority sectors. So based on the analysis, but also quite largely on the public consultation that was made prior to adoption, on plastics, with a new strategy on plastics to be formulated, on food waste, also concrete action on how to reduce food waste. Critical raw materials was mentioned by Mr. Chupagia. Construction and demolition, of course, an important area to reduce the overall amount of waste. And biomass, bio-based product, here also where you have all the aspects of cascading of resources and innovation in the use of bio-based materials. A few examples of this action. So funding is mobilized and immobilized at high level to support circular economy. Quality standards, in particular on secondary raw materials. The measures on eco-design are important to include right from the beginning of designing materials and product circular economy aspects. The revised regulation of fertilizers, I mentioned already. The strategy on plastics is important to reconcile the different interest on plastics. So here also to building recyclability, biodegradability, but also treating the question of hazardous substances, which is a very important and delicate question on how can we continue to exclude harmful substances from the materials flows and at the same time promote recycling. And consumer protection is also a key element of the action so as to build the acceptance and buying support by consumers to this circular economy. My last slide I won't develop in detail because I've exhausted my time, but just to mention that facing the action plan, which is focused on EU action and action by the Commission in particular, we need to see also all the local initiatives. So here I mentioned initiatives by local authorities, but also industrial initiatives on recycling and concrete way to reduce food waste. And this is important to put them in relation and to see that circular economy happens not only at EU level and in large framework, but also concretely, locally, and it's where consumers can be involved in particular. Thank you, and looking forward to the debate today.